Welcome to Sunny Brands, the podcast that highlights the companies that make the world a better place. I'm Eliezer Reese, founder of OutNotion, a branding agency and proud B Corp here in Portland, Oregon. And here are my co-hosts.
Hi, this is Rebecca, CEO and co-founder of the Impact Collective, also a certified B Corp in Portland, Oregon.
And I'm Sarah. I am the other co-founder of the Impact Collective. Today, we are going to talk about OpenAI. And just as a little bit of a timestamp, because things change and the world changes rapidly, we are January 2025 kind of talking about OpenAI and what is going on with that. So OpenAI is a research and deployment company whose mission is to ensure that artificial general intelligence benefits all of humanity. We're not going to dive to the debate part yet and the dialogue, but that's a really lofty mission statement. So OpenAI, some people might not be familiar with sort of the name of the company, but that's ChatGPT, which is a chatbot that uses machine learning to generate human-like text and code in response to user prompts. And then also DALL-E, DALL-E, which is an AI model that generates image from text description. So all of those little, write me an email that nicely but firmly tells somebody, those are ChatGPT and OpenAI. So OpenAI was founded in 2015 and is not a B Corp, but we're talking about them today specifically because there have been a lot of conversations sort of in the ether about OpenAI becoming a public benefit company. So a public benefit company, PBC, is a for-profit corporation that is legally required to balance the interests of shareholders, employees, customers, and the public. Rebecca's going to talk a lot more about that. She knows a lot more than I do about it.
Which is different than a B Corp.
Yeah,
Different than a B Corp. So a public benefit company and a B Corp are two separate things, although not to further complicate the matter, but in some states, there is a legal requirement that you have to become a benefit company in order to become a B Corp. So just a little bit of context, and this is also in sort of the conversation right now. Elon Musk's AI company is a public benefit company, and Anthropic, which is an AI company founded by former OpenAI employees, is also a public benefit company. So we're going to talk about what that means, what we think about it, and what we think about AI in general today, which is going to be
just a small topic today.
Yeah, very exciting.
All right. Well, to start, I'm going to take us back to when OpenAI was founded. So they were actually founded as a nonprofit, and you've probably heard about this because they have a really weird structure, and I'll get into that. But originally in 2015, they were founded as a nonprofit with the mission that Sarah said, to build safe AI to benefit all of humanity. They did this because they really had a belief that the most effective way to grow and build AI was in a safe way, is through a nonprofit structure. But then they realized in around 2019 that they wouldn't be able to scale as fast as they wanted to, which they said rightfully, maybe rightfully so, that in service of their mission as a nonprofit, because a nonprofit can only take donations, grants, all those type of funding, and that wasn't supporting the growth that they wanted.
Right.
So they decided to create a capped profit arm, so a for-profit business that then would take investment money. And that's when they exploded. 2019, obviously,
Why do you put air quotes on capped?
Just because my notes have it.
Quote unquote capped. Capped at what?
I've never... because that's how I wrote it. That's the only reason. And that's what they said. So I'll get into what that means.
Okay.
So the way this works, the for-profit is fully controlled by the nonprofit. So they kept the nonprofit as the controlling entity of the for-profit. And they said this was to protect the mission. The nonprofit would be in charge of the mission and keeping it safe. It had all voting rights, all control of the for-profit. The directors are independent and do not own equity in OpenAI. So they were really trying to separate the profit motivation from the mission piece.
Gotcha.
But also the investors that came on have no control. They're not a part of, they don't get voting rights. They're not a part of the board. The board is independent. That was a big piece of it. Also, the profit to investors is capped. This is where the capped quote comes
Yeah,
in.
please clarify.
Well, this is why I wrote quotes. Thank you for asking. I put in parentheses, but they don't mention what the cap is. But anyways, they cap the profit to investors. So they're putting all these things in place to try and avoid this extractive, profit-driven model. So that's going great,
No issues there. End of episode.
Then November 2023, this was a huge thing in the news. I'm sure a lot of people heard about this. The dates are important. November 17th, 2023, the board, so this independent nonprofit board that controls OpenAI, decided to oust the CEO and co-founder Sam Altman.
Yep.
They've had a vote of no confidence over concerns that he basically was not handling the safety part of the of OpenAI mission well. He was being really aggressive about looking for funding. He was, what happens when you scale really quick and are driven by profit? That's exactly what he was doing. And his take is that was in service of the mission to build AI, which is good for humanity. But the nonprofit independent directors, there's a lot to get into. I'll try and keep it a little high level.
He
but
wholeheartedly believes that. If you watch any interviews that he gave around that time, he falls on the sword that this is the best thing that could happen to humanity.
Yep, exactly. So these independent nonprofit board members, there were allegations that Sam Altman was, like I said, too profit driven, which meant he was also untrustworthy. There were instances of him lying about things. There was allegedly psychologically abusive behavior. So there was just really all these signs of like grow at all costs. And as we know, all the bad things that come with that. So the board had a vote of no confidence. That caused some chaos. As you may remember, 745 of the 770 employees signed a letter threatening to resign as a result of him leaving. All those investors they were up in arms. The New York Times had an article that just said it was chaos, basically. The valuation dipped a ton. Microsoft, which was it's a weird relation. They're like a partnership, but obviously they say they don't have a lot of control, but Microsoft's stock dipped almost 3%. So clearly
there's more of a relationship there than they let on.
Yes. So all this chaos is happening. People are mad at these board members. Then there was like some board resignations. The board was up in arms, all these things. 5 days later, he was reinstated as the CEO. And so it was chaos. And then the board was totally gone. So that's the background, and that's where we are at today. So that was a year ago. And Sam Altman is now left to do whatever he wants to do.
Tell me exactly how you feel.
Yeah.
But yeah, am I being a little too obvious? Well, actually, it's really interesting because I read a bunch of articles that say like this was an epic failure. I actually have Harvard Business Review had an article called "OpenAI's Failed Experiment in Governance." So a lot of smart people see this as a total failure in governance because this weird structure they had set up, which is not common, which is pretty new, which like hasn't been heard of. Basically, everyone is saying that led to this chaos, this devaluation. Like the company could have gone under, basically. What I didn't see mentioned in a lot of those articles is like, but what about the mission around safety? Like who? Now it feels like that is just gone. Like who's holding them accountable to the safety piece? And basically it's like safety was put against profit and safety lost, you know? And these instances saying that it's bad governance, maybe this wasn't the best structure, but it probably wasn't the best structure because those independent board members didn't actually have the control that they were supposed to have, right? So
you believe they should have stayed a nonprofit?
I don't know what they should have stayed as. It depends what if their mission really was to put safety first, perhaps be a nonprofit. It's just clear that this is the question that I grapple with a lot in this work is like, does power and money corrupt? Absolutely. It's like basically once they started getting power, then all the like feel good things went to the wayside.
Well, and adding in the fact that it's within like an industry and a specific technology that is rapidly changing and advancing and is very much like, and there's so many players in it that like the first person to get to, whatever thresholds get to win, right? And so there's like inherent like competition, speed, profit, power, all of those things colliding that maybe it wasn't like their governance model.
Right.
That was why
exactly.
it didn't work.
Yeah. So there's that. And then you mentioned the public benefit corporation. So now where they're at is they have announced, I think within the next 2 years, they're going to be moving to a public benefit corporation model. So they're getting rid of the nonprofit and they're going to be a totally for-profit public benefit corporation, which means legally they have to consider all stakeholders, the environment and people in their decision-making.
And how do you feel about that?
I will tell you how I feel about that. So it sounds good, right? Like,
sounds great.
Yeah, like that's like part of becoming a B Corp. Like that is all good. Sounds like they're on the right track. This is a perfect model of for-profit doing good, which is what we're all about. Like I love that. The interesting,
I just for whatever reason don't believe you.
I feel like there's a second half to the sentence.
Yeah.
So. Problems with benefit corp. So it's interesting. The public benefit corporation model, it's the best we have, and it's not perfect. It sounds good. It's supposed to provide legal protection for your purpose. Hasn't really been tested. But the interesting thing, when I hear that Elon Musk is becoming a public benefit corp, something in me is like, why would he do that? So a little digging, and actually Sarah and I met someone recently who's she lives in the Netherlands, and she's really big on social enterprise. She talks a lot about social enterprises and what does she call it? Zero growth, no growth model.
Yeah, no growth theory or something.
She told us about this whole thing going on with public benefit corporations because it's very alarming. So it turns out that all these companies are getting public benefit corporation in Delaware, which is obviously for a reason. Why would they be picking Delaware? Turns out that in Delaware a couple of years ago, I think it's 2 years ago, they changed what it means to be a public benefit corporation, and they kept that you have to consider all stakeholders in your decision making, but they made a big change. They increased the threshold for shareholders to file a lawsuit to enforce the obligation to hold the companies accountable. And you must own at least 2% or shares valued at least $2 million to be able to hold the companies accountable. So basically that is saying shareholder activism. So when you've heard stories about shareholders that are like, this company is not acting on their mission, and they actually sue them. That's a real thing that has been used in the past. This is making it a lot harder.
Right.
So
you gotta own.
So imagine owning 2% of OpenAI. Like
it's a lot.
Or it says at least 2 million, but still 2 million is. I don't have 2 million. Like I could not sue OpenAI.
So in Portland, Oregon, anybody can do that.
Yeah.
In Delaware, only people who own $2 million of the company can do that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's interesting too, because, and I don't know what type of, like what Rebecca was saying about sort of this being like legally tested and vetted, right? Because like in our, operating agreement, in our incorporating documents, it says that we will consider all, stakeholders, right? And so we're a public benefit company. But like, if we didn't, like, how would somebody know? What would they do about it? What kind of process would they go through? So it's like, it's this first step to like make the statement. But with a lot of the stuff that we talk about, like if there are not mechanisms for accountability, then what's the point of a statement, right? And so Delaware has just vastly increased the threshold of what a mechanism for accountability is, which is like, so what's the point?
They don't even have
Right.
those thresholds for regular corporations. So it's actually, to me, this is my opinion, it looks like they're all doing this to actually avoid being held accountable.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Impact washing.
Yeah, it's impact washing. Exactly. Yeah. So that's all I have to say. Just kidding.
It's like, I doubt that.
I think that the question that's going to keep coming up for us in this episode is, can an AI company be something like a B Corp?
Yeah,
or have
right.
or carry through B Corp values
Yeah.
without
Yeah.
being certified or whatever. But
Right.
Yeah.
can they do good to the world?
Well,
I don't think OpenAI will. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
I think it's very clear. I don't know enough about them from when they were founded in 2015 to know like how pure their motives were. But if you start as a nonprofit, it seems like perhaps I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that they had pure motives.
Yep.
But like then all this money came into it, and then they have all these investors that only care about short-term profits, and all these other forces came into play, and like we see this again and again and again, like that companies that start purpose driven, really pure motives, they get acquired or investors come in or whatever, which is why I'm always looking at like the money tells the story,
And
right?
do you know if the Elon Musk AI company and the other AI company you mentioned, are they also doing the same thing in Delaware, or they are actually
They're already public benefit corporation
in other states?
In Delaware.
All
I
over
don't know.
Delaware.
I don't
Yeah.
know about Anthropic,
I don't know that one.
but Elon
either.
Musk's one.
Yeah,
It's in Delaware
It's
as
in
well.
Delaware.
Is in Delaware. Yeah. Well, and we've talked a lot about in like the B impact assessment, which is what you go through to get B Corp certified. There's a disclosure questionnaire about controversial industries and all of this type of stuff. You know, AI is not currently considered a controversial industry or like specified within the B impact assessment. I think it's a controversial industry. And I think that there is so much like right at the tip of the iceberg of a lot of like inherent harm that like, and there are not, well,
You know what's interesting is social media is a controversial industry
Yes.
for B Corp. A social media company
Can't be B Corp
can't be B
certified.
Corp certified. So
Okay.
it's interesting that AI. I would think those are very similar, but
Yeah.
you know, yeah,
They may still be catching up.
yeah, exactly.
speaking of catching up, I have some things to say about AI.
I'm sure you do.
So first of all, super weird doing all of this research, you know, because I do Google searches and try to come up, you know, finding questions and answers and all this stuff. And Google's generative AI is like giving me all of the, you know,
It's like, no, I'm good.
yeah, it felt super weird to be like, is AI bad? And Google's like, no, it's great. And it's like, here's
I'm
all
really
the benefits
good.
to it.
Shut
and
up.
I was like, yeah, don't ask me that. It's like, query could not be completed. So I had to dig. And so I have a variety of concerns about AI. Privacy, security, ethical concerns, bias, social manipulation, and algorithms, and propaganda, and all of this kind of stuff. But this is not a 3-hour-long podcast, nor do I ever want it to be. So I'm limited to the amount of time, so the scope of what I want to talk about. And please bear with me. I'm a little bit out of my depths with this, but I want to talk about the environmental impact of AI. So I'm going to have to consult my notes because there's a lot of facts and figures that I did not memorize and realized I don't need to memorize that. But so oftentimes people don't think about the environmental impact of technology, right? You know, software, the internet, AI, all this stuff. It's just, you know, floating around in the ether, right? There's no trash washing up on the beach and no 6-pack rings around turtles' necks. But the environmental impact of AI is staggering. And also the lack of transparency in terms of measurement and outputs and all of this stuff from AI companies makes it really difficult to actually know sort of facts and figures and what's going on there. So I want to start with like a couple of context settings around the amount of energy. So one ChatGPT search uses 2.9 watt hours of energy, which is about 10 times the amount of energy that a single Google search takes up. So if you consider 200 million queries a day, that adds up to 621.4 megawatt hours every day. The annual energy consumption is projected to reach 226.8 gigawatt hours. So watt hours, megawatt hours, gigawatt hours. They just keep getting bigger.
Give me a picture. What does that?
really big.
What is
What does that equate
I'm so
to?
glad you asked.
Yeah.
So 226.8 gigawatt hours over a year, annual consumption of just ChatGPT would fully charge 3 million electric vehicles, or 95% of all EVs in the US. It could power over 21,000 US homes for an entire year. Or it could run the entire country of Finland or Belgium for a day. So that's a lot of energy consumption. That's a lot of, that's adding up, right? So energy consumption is one of the big considerations in terms of the environmental impact of AI. So powering these computing systems requires energy like electricity. So in places where we're using fossil fuels, that energy use impacts the environment through fossil fuel combustion, which releases pollutants into the air that causes air and water pollution, respiratory issues, acid rain, terrible things, things that exacerbate the climate crisis that we're in, and then extraction of fossil fuels, the energy infrastructure that is required, like disrupts ecosystems and causes biological harm. So since 2012, the amount of computing power required to train AI models, so there's sort of two segments, like they're training the AI models and then they're utilizing them. So training them, the amount of energy consumption has doubled every 3.4 months. So that's like exponential, right? Around the globe, so for context on that, around the globe, data centers currently account for about 1 to 1.5% of global electricity use. By 2040, it's expected that the emissions from AI will make up 14% of global emissions.
Wow.
So that's a lot.
Yeah.
So we're talking about energy consumption, use, all of this kind of stuff. So the other side of it is the hardware, right? Data centers, all of the hardware that's required. The biggest concern around this is mining of materials and also e-waste. So e-waste produced by AI technology, by 2050, the World Economic Forum projects that the total amount of e-waste will have surpassed 120 million metric tons. So that's a lot. So what we've got here, and I think the thing that kind of ties this back around for me, that I think, because I think, Rebecca and I have always sort of had a little bit more of a bent towards social impact, right? And then kind of thinking about the way that like environmental concerns affect people. And so we arrive at environmental equity. So there's an imperative that AI's environmental cost so the environmental cost of AI is not equitably distributed, across regions and communities. I know. So, and there's a couple of things. So, for example,
by that you mean
it's disproportionately affecting marginalized communities in developing countries
because of where the power is coming from.
Yep.
Yeah.
And because of things. So in 2022, Google operated a data center in Finland that was 97% carbon-free energy. Their equivalent data centers in Asia ran on 4 to 18% carbon-free energy. So there's a combination of things happening here, right? There's regulations, there's governments, there's racism, there's like marginalized communities who are not having sort of like a voice in being able to advocate for their own safety. And so the existing approaches right now are disproportionately affecting marginalized communities and exacerbate existing environmental inequity.
Makes me think of wherever you go, there you are.
Totally.
Weird that this new technology is going to have all the problems that we already have in this country.
It's just
or the world.
exacerbating those things, right? And it's not, so I have a lot of concerns about AI, and I think that, I was just sharing, I saw on LinkedIn the other day, somebody said, posted this funny picture where they were like, I asked ChatGPT to, create an image of me based on my searches. And I was like, oh, that's kind of fun. Like, let me do that. And then I did it, and it's I did it again. And I was like, well, but what was this? I did it again. She's like 4 times. And I think it was Rebecca who was like, because I kept sending them to her being like, look how funny. She was like, okay, that's really funny. And also, like, every time you make like a ChatGPT query, that's the equivalent of like
Oops.
2 gallons of water or something. And I'm like, okay, well, fuck, like everything's ruined. But like,
I'm
right,
sorry.
it's okay. No, I'm so glad, right? Because I'm so glad that, and that's the thing is that sometimes you just don't think about stuff like that, where it's like, I'm just going to do this like little query, or I don't feel like writing this email, so I'm gonna have ChatGPT do it for me, or I want to make like a goofy picture in DALL-E or whatever. And I just don't, I think that it's like hugely concerning that people aren't tying these things together.
Yeah.
And I'm like exist in this world and I didn't, right? It didn't like occur to me this impact.
Yeah. Well, because we don't see there's no consequence.
Totally.
Right. We're not seeing the cost of it. We're not actually paying more because we're using more. Like that is a huge part of the problem. We're not aligning the actual costs with what's happening with the use, right? Yeah.
So, I, as a creative, I'm sure you have concerns about AI, and I'm so curious to hear what your thoughts might be.
So I'm gonna be okay.
Just say it.
You like it.
Say pro AI.
I'm pro AI.
Gasp noise.
After everything we just told you? Oh, boy.
So,
We love the gray.
but it's
We're
it's
all about the gray.
complicated. It's highly complicated, and in preparing for this, the question continues to be for me is so factually every technological advancement comes with downsides. We're paying for the downsides of the internet today. All the entries, all those Google searches that are happening that we're consuming energy because of them. They're happening because the internet was made possible.
Yeah.
So internet was created. We're paying for it. We have all this energy being used by Google because of that internet decision. So for me, it's asking the question, in 50 years, would I be glad if AI was created? For me, it's like asking today, would I be glad if the internet was created? It's tough. It's tough.
I don't know how I'd answer that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough question. It's a tough question to answer. And we have more data about the internet today than we have about AI today. So to give you like is AI's potential worth its drawbacks? Basically, it's the question that we're trying to answer. And, it's when I think about, I'm thinking about where I'm from. Like people like me from DR, Dominican Republic, are able to, because of AI, also have jobs, or make their jobs easier, or that sort of thing. So, like things that are happening today are early cancer detection because of AI, remote patient care, assistive technologies for like folks with disabilities. So like StorySign, for example, translates text into sign language for deaf children. Facing emotions is another platform. It helps blind people understand facial expressions. So like the same technology that can cause all this destruction, like the internet, like social media, it took us 20 years to start questioning social media and start to create regulations. And now I can go on my Instagram and say, I want age appropriate content or blah, 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 all these different things. Like now we're seeing, my hope for AI is that we'll get there. The thing that makes me it's just conflicting. And I would say you're right in that between now and when we figure it out, there's going to be a lot of casualties on all fronts. But I don't know how to avoid that with any new invention. Is it worth the invention in the first place?
Yeah.
And it's all the good. Like some people are putting a lot of stakes in the basket of like, hey, I think AI is gonna give us access to cure for cancer. People probably said that about the internet.
Yeah.
Which could be argued.
So it's really interesting because I wasn't exactly sure how we would circle this conversation back around, but I think I just thought of something. So here's my thing. Hot take. If I had an iota of confidence in our government, I might be closer to the middle with you here, right? I think about in understanding the complexity of all of these things, in understanding and listening to science and experts. I can't help but think about, there was that, I don't know what governmental body it was, but there was a representative who came in, they were testifying about climate change, global warming, and he had a snowball in his hand from outside because it was winter, and he was like, global warming, then how did I get this snowball? And it's like, okay, so that's who we want making these types of regulations, right? And so if governing bodies and regulatory bodies could leap ahead by 100 years in terms of, like, again, trust and faith science and experts, then I think we could get out ahead of this. What we're talking about here, and what we're talking about with OpenAI and public benefit companies, is that then the responsibility falls in the hands of the companies who are creating this technology, leveraging it, sort of giving access and parameters to ensure that those things are being done responsibly and with the impact to stakeholders in mind, right? It's like, have to think about, like, the companies who are building and developing the data centers have to think about environmental equity, have to think about the impacts on people, and I like, one of the things that came up in my research, there's a program called XView 2. So it combines machine learning and computer vision with satellite imagery. So it identifies buildings after natural disasters. And so it helps first responders, do search and rescue faster, rebuild communities faster. I don't think that there are no benefits to technology. I just think that there is precedent to make an assumption that this race towards the front for technology will be at the detriment to the least protected among us.
Yeah, I think one of the things that, like, we worked on a project for Arthur AI, which is basically a regulatory product that helps. It's a tool that checks and improves AI systems. So they read AI models to make sure that the information that the AI model is spitting out is equitable. So to illustrate this, James, he's a 35-year-old black man in a small Georgia town, and he applied for a mortgage, and he got denied. What he didn't know was that the bank was using a new AI system to review his mortgage application. And this AI learned from all data that showed years of unfair lending practices in the South. And because of this, the AI wrongly thought James was at high risk just because of his race and where he lived, even though his finances were strong. So AI, like Arthur, would be the kind of engine that would help flag that and tell the developer, hey, this is what your model is doing. And hey, here's how to fix it.
Yeah.
So, like, those kinds of products are the things that give me hope about it. And again, I'm conflicted.
Yeah.
Partially, I'm unsure, like, it's here. It's not going away.
Totally. Yeah.
So I do believe, like, no, we need all the regulations that we need to come up with. We need to come up with them. But the thing is not going away.
Yeah.
It's gonna be hard for me to be like, no, I'm not gonna use Perplexity, or no, I'm not gonna use Google. I mean, now Google you're forced to use AI when you use Google.
Yeah. I keep thinking all the points that you're bringing up about the good uses for AI are like, they just all sound like Band-Aids. Like what you just said, it's AI is created to solve a problem that AI created. It's like,
right. In that case, yes.
But like a lot of it is like, maybe except for cancer research, but a lot of it is like trying to solve problems that were created because of the way harmful way that we live in society. Like the data centers is a great example. It's like, well, if we can just make them solar powered, like that'll be fine. And yet our consumption just keeps going up and up and up. Google, Microsoft, they all have these net zero by 2030. I think they all have. And yet their emissions have gone up over the years because of AI. So it's like there's an argument in the environmental world that's like, oh, if we just make it all renewable, it'll be fine. It's not that simple. It's like we need to build the infrastructure, all these things. The point is, like, we need to change our behaviors.
Yeah.
And that is not happening. I don't know how this is when I lose hope.
Yeah. Well,
we just need to consume less, and people aren't gonna do that.
It's a deeply philosophical discussion,
Yes.
right? Because the other thing that came up that I just it's like all of these like cascading developments, right? When they talk about social media algorithms that then serve you more relevant content because I bought socks 3 weeks ago and they think I need socks now, that makes it easier for me to make purchases that are fast fashion, that are terrible for the environment, the expectation of rapid results, of next day delivery, that emissions in delivery systems and supply chains. It's exactly what Rebecca's talking about, because if you dig down to the bottom of everything, it's sort of like a societal issue of overconsumption, of and not to get like really, but it's like it's an individualistic mindset rather than a community-based mindset. And it's like what you're talking about with like Sam Altman and OpenAI. The original intention was to be in community and to protect the community. And as soon as the individual rises above that and becomes a priority and more important, then suddenly, fuck the community. I'm taking all the money and I'm running, right? Which is like capitalism.
Well. And we're wired that way too. It's this weird thing about that's like a survival thing, but it's in this distorted way that we just don't know when it's too much. Our biology has not caught up with our technology.
Totally.
You know? Yeah.
Well, and I'm also curious, Eleazar, like, I know, like within the creative community, of like AI, we've seen like the Coca-Cola holiday commercial that was all AI generated. Artists who are having their work stolen, there's like in the creative community, because the thing is like, companies just like they're not all companies. There are some companies who just want to pay the least amount of money in order to maximize profits.
Right.
So if I can type into DALL-E, make me a Christmas Santa or whatever with all of its inherent biases and energy consumption and all of that, then they're fine with that.
Yeah.
So as a creative...
I do have a hot take. I'm an immigrant. I came to this country and not with nothing, but I came as an immigrant. I make more money today, like 8 times, 20 times more than that my parents ever made. And again, it's probably the hopeful in me that I believe us creatives can harness now this new technology to actually make ourselves more valuable. Again, that's with the big caveat that a lot of L's will be taken between now and then. That rewiring of jobs and people figuring, although there's going to be a lot of like downsides to that curve. I am basically like what you're hearing from me is just the like, in a way, I'm settling. I'm saying this is already here. I can't really
maybe not settling, accepting, which is
accepting.
very healthy.
Yeah, like I'm accepting. Like it's already here. What can I do with it?
Yeah.
How can I use it for purpose? How can I shift the curve?
Yeah.
Because I don't think can we get rid of it? I think the can has been opened.
Yeah.
All right.
The cat is
I'm
out
on
of the
your
bag.
side, Eleazar.
But it's so interesting. It's just, I think that like, it's almost, I don't know, there's like no answer, right? Because I think the thing is like, you're right, it's already here. And, some L's will be taken along the way can mean, somebody doesn't get a job, but it also can mean people die. Like AI is is being used to deny like health insurance claims. AI is being used.
Well, we'll die. The environment, the climate is killing people.
Totally. Well, it's like, and James and the loan, thing, right? Like, I'm super glad that Arthur was there to identify that, right? But if Arthur wasn't there, then James is a victim, of the system. And so I think it also becomes this thing of like, which is also like very American, which is like in the race for technology, in the race for like future, how many lives are we willing to lay down? Whether that means like death or a job, right? And I just like, and I don't think you can put the cat back in the box or whatever,
Yeah.
the box is open, right?
Yeah.
AI is here. Teachers are battling against it, trying to figure out how to do school with it. Like
Right.
we're in a period where everybody's trying to figure it out.
Right.
I guess then the question becomes, how do we mitigate the harm being caused
Correct.
in this learning period?
And that gives me a lot of passion and energy and wakes me up in the morning. And I'm like, okay, how do I show up? How do I show up in my community? How do I show up in this issue? How do I vote in regards to this issue? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm with y'all on all the concerns. I'm just like, can't revert it.
Yeah.
So even if I disagree with it, the only way we go back is by getting rid of the internet, social media, all that, and go back to like
Yeah.
the old
Maybe
ages.
not revert back, but change. I'd love to see us change how we use it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or like I was saying, aligning those costs
Yeah.
appropriately. That's the systemic thing, is that
Right.
like we're not experiencing the consequences.
I think
of it.
we so many people from all different sectors, we all have an opportunity to like make an impact in that space, which currently is creating a lot of harm.
Well, and it's so interesting. It was I think last year or the year before, as we had a client, we're helping them through B Corp certification. Part of it is documentation, and we're reviewing documentation. And I was like, this documentation's a little funky. I don't quite know what's going on here. And my heart died a little bit when I realized I was reviewing an impact report that was ChatGPT write me an impact report.
You know why your heart died? Because AI
Is better than
No, AI is just perhaps it can be just like a human brain.
Yeah.
But humans have hearts.
Yeah.
AI will never have hearts.
So true.
Don't get me
Rebecca.
started on can AI create art.
Exactly.
Don't get me started on that
Don't
question.
get me started
So
on
they
what is
can't
art.
create art. They can't create impact reports.
That's right. That's right. It can't create art.
That's the conclusion.
Yeah.
Well, and I think what we're all also saying is like responsibility as individuals,
Yes.
as citizens, as business owners too. If we don't feel confident in like our government's ability to create legislation, which I'm not claiming as an opinion for all of us, I'll take that myself. Then it's our responsibility to hold people accountable and to use AI for good.
Yeah, I think something I forgot to mention, not to go back.
TM.
Was that I did have a client who asked for an illustrations that we created to like, hey, can we use this and replicate the style with illustrations? So going back to that artist discussion, and we were like, no, you can't do that. You will have to pay that artist for that. And that's why I see the opportunity. Back to the opportunity, that artist can now make more money because in the legal contracts that can be set, it's like, if you're going to use AI, we need to discuss that. This can only be used in this other way. So those are the ways that I think artists can profit more from it. And but again, the legalities and all those things need to catch up to that for that to happen.
Right.
And it also relies on a company to have integrity enough to say,
Right.
are you going to use it that? And then it puts the onus on the art. Anyway,
Yeah.
we probably shouldn't get into that piece because that's a part
We're
two.
not lawyers.
But yes, we all have the power, and we all should see this as an opportunity to show up to our communities and see how we can make a difference in this space. I think that's
Hell
the
yeah.
beautiful
I think we can agree on that.
That's a
Yeah,
beautiful conclusion.
We agree.
To wrap it up, today, is it your opinion, can an AI company be a purpose-driven corporation or a B Corp today?
They can. Like
Yeah.
they're legally, or according to B Corp standards, they can. Are you more asking, do I think it's possible?
Correct.
I mean, if I started it, yeah.
Interesting.
If they hired the Impact Collective, probably.
Interesting.
I mean, it depends who's doing it, Yeah.
Okay.
I think that there are so many ways, especially within the B Corp community, that you can create operational impact. So you can pay your workers well, you can have certain policies, you can put things in place as a business operationally that get you to those 80 points. There is nothing in the disclosure questionnaire currently about are you an AI company, and therefore you're disqualified. So technically, could an AI company get through the B Impact assessment and reach 80 points? Yes.
Okay. Well, that's it, y'all. Thank you for joining us. You can get the episode show notes and transcript on our website, sunnybrandspodcast.com.
If you have ideas or suggestions about any companies you'd like for us to take a look at and dissect, you can drop us a line at hello@sunnybrandspodcast.com. And if you want to learn more about the Impact Collective and all of the things that we do to help companies live out their purpose, you can find more information at theimpactcollectivepdx.com.